and welcome back, lovely, to the final day of the Love Breakthrough virtual retreat. And I have been so looking forward to being able to sit down and talk directly with you in my training session today. So this is a solo session, it's just me talking with you. And before I dive in to our topic today, which is the 4 ways which you can leverage the pain of your breakup to create an epic relationship, regardless of how long ago, whether it's been a recent breakup or in the past, I want to just firstly acknowledge you for being here today, for showing up and for being here, because if there's one thing I know, and as far as putting this beautiful virtual retreat together, I would have loved to have 14 days of soulfully nourishing, spiritually empowering and uplifting, beautiful conversations. And whilst they're really important, I also know that the things that really move the needle for us the most when it comes to shifting our results in our relationships is when we actually go back and do some of the inner work that's a little bit harder to do. So that's why you'll notice that quite a lot of the topics and a lot of the guest experts that we've had along these 14 days have really challenged you to, well, firstly, to take responsibility for the results that you've gotten in your love life so far, and then to really encourage you to reflect and look at what is it within me that I can potentially heal, how can I grow, how can I learn, how can I change, so that I can become an energetic match for that beautiful partnership that I know that I deserve. So I just wanted to mention that before we start. And I can't believe it's been a pretty transformational 14 days, but I especially wanted to share with you what I feel are probably 2 of the biggest blocks that I see with the women that I work with, as far as them not being able to fully actualize their dream relationship. The first main block that I see is, and many of you will be able to relate to this, is when we actually stay energetically attached to a man that's not quite right for us, or a man that's never going to commit. And whether we stay in relationship with the wrong person, or whether we actually hold a space in our heart for that person, or in our mind sort of waiting, wishing and hoping that at some point in the future things will change, and it might be someone perhaps that comes in and out of our lives. But I really see that as actually the biggest block that most women face. Is we may come to our 30s, our 40s, or even our 50s and find that we have some regret because we've perhaps wasted years, months, years, decades maybe, holding energetic space for the wrong person. So I want you to just think about, is there someone in your life at the moment perhaps that you're still energetically connecting to, because it can hold us back from being open to receive something new and even more wonderful. And then the second reason, which actually kind of leads on from the first reason, is when we don't do our relationship breakups right. And like, breakups are such a transformational time, and they can be so painful that a whole slew of kind of issues come up for us in breakups. We can build resentments. We can decide what that breakup means, and maybe what it means about us. Does it mean that a man's never going to be able to commit to me? Does it mean perhaps I'm not worthy? Does it mean, the way that I look is not going to be enough for a man? And then we can also tend to take on beliefs about our environment, about men. There's no great available men, they're all married, men don't want to commit these days. So when we've gone through a breakup, there's a whole range of things that can happen, and that breakup can really change us. And most of you will reflect back, you're not the same person that you were after you had a really painful breakup. So it's really critical when we've been through a breakup, and it's not too late if your breakup was a while ago, to make sure that breakup changed you for the better, rather than closing you off to opportunity. So I just want to set the scene a little bit for what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about the ways in which you can leverage that painful breakup to make sure that it's been done the right way, so that it actually opens you up to receiving and experiencing a beautiful partnership. Before we dive in though, I just want to talk a little bit about how I came to do this work, because I've sort of met with you through all of the other interviews, but if you haven't had a chance to read my bio, I, much like other love coaches and relationship coaches in our industry, came to this work as a love intuitive and a breakup expert the hard way, I guess. I came to this work because for decades I literally had relationships that would last 1 or 2 or 3 years, and then they would end. I would go through a devastating breakup. There was always, whilst there were beautiful connections and there was lots of passion in the relationship, they were always never quite fully emotionally available, and that was my pattern. They never, they were happy to have a fun time with me for a year or a couple of years, but when it came to those tough conversations about planning a future together and sort of more longer term commitment, that's where I really struggled with. And so I think it was almost my 40th birthday when I had my last incredibly devastating breakup. We'd been together for a couple of years. It was not the first breakup that I'd had where I found out that my partner had been cheating. And for those of you who've had a partner that's been unfaithful before, you know that for a long time before you actually find out, there's just something about our women's intuition where we kind of know. And it's a really awful place to be in, and my heart goes out to anyone who's dealt with that or who is experiencing that right now. But at that time I was actually transitioning. I'd studied psychology and worked in health psychology in corporate, and I was transitioning into coaching. And I made the decision, because some of my breakups in the past had literally taken me years and years to fully recover, I guess. Even though I wouldn't say that I wanted to get back together with those exes, it took me a long time. I really lost my mojo to get myself back on track. My work was impacted. Other sorts of relationships and other areas of your life can be significantly impacted with painful breakups. So I really decided this time it's going to be different. And I was able to utilize a lot of the tools that I learnt through learning about coaching and through NLP to create a much different and much better experience throughout this breakup. And first of all, it started with, and I guess this is a little bit of a mindset shift that any of you can use if you're going through a difficult time. I really made that breakup mean something positive rather than something negative. So I kept saying to myself, I can't be going through all of this again. I can't be going through all of this hurt and all of this heartache for nothing. Like this has to be for something. The universe is sending me this experience, and what am I meant to learn, and how is it going to change me for the better? And literally my download about that was that I wanted to take all of the lessons that I'd learned in breakups and coming out the other side and creating an even better life and having an even better relationship, and I wanted to share that and teach that with other women. So that's kind of how I came about doing this work. And since 2011 I've been working together with women to support them through their breakups or their painful divorces. And through that work of being a breakup coach, I guess you could say I became a bit of an accidental love coach in a way. And it was through that process that I'm actually going to teach you today the importance of how we can use our breakup to create a beautiful loving experience. Because what I noticed about coaching women through their breakups, and these are the key steps that I'm going to talk about, is that when we did all of that work to heal the pain of the breakup, to learn new emotional management tools, to get all the beautiful lessons about what went wrong in the relationship and heal and make sure that the next relationship started off on a beautiful foot to make sure we had right choices in partners. What I learnt about that is that my breakup clients, because they felt so great after coaching, after our breakup coaching, a lot of them continued to coach with me afterwards. And they actually then went on to have really beautiful, successful relationships. And many of them then actually referred some of their single girlfriends to me to start doing love coaching. So that's sort of how I fell into helping single women find their beautiful love story. But what I noticed was that my breakup clients actually ended up more effortlessly, I would say, finding a new relationship than the women that came to me sort of very ready to find a new love and very focused and very determined. And why was that? I had to sort of really reflect on, why are my breakup clients actually finding love more effortlessly than my beautiful single girls who are desperately ready to find their dream partner? And there's a couple of key reasons and good takeaways for you as well. That when we go through a breakup, it's literally so debilitating that we will do anything to get out of the pain. And so when my breakup clients start working, they're like literally open and ready to do whatever I tell them. If I suggest to do this meditation, or let's do this journaling exercise, or we're going to do this process, they're open and willing to embrace whatever it is that they need to do so they can feel better and they can release all of that negative emotion. And oftentimes a breakup the pain will really crack us open. For anyone who's ever had their own dark night of the soul, you'll know it's such a raw and vulnerable place that when you're already cracked open to the pain, that inner pain that we're holding on to, we are actually in a place where we're more open and willing to do the work and go through that. We're already there. We're already in the depths of that pain, that cracking open space. We're willing to do that work. So that's the first thing that I noticed. As a functioning, happy, single that's ready to find their dream partner, peeling back all those layers of self-protection that we've built up to hold, to hold a container for our independent lifestyle and holding our emotions, it can be a little bit more difficult to peel away those layers and really get to the core of what the inner work is that we need to do. So the other thing that I noticed with my breakup clients is that the focus for them on doing this work was not because the result that they wanted in the end was to find a partner. I mean, ultimately, yes, but it was to get an amazing life happening for themselves, to feel good, to get their mojo back, to set amazing new goals, to pivot and leverage this breakup and use that as a way to create a life that's even better than what they thought they might have had with their ex, almost starting from a really blank slate. And so therefore, all of the energy and attention and effort that they're doing is on themselves and creating their best life and raising their vibration up to a point where they are loving life and so engaged and so high vibing that a beautiful man comes into their life because of that. So they're not sitting there in a space of lack and wondering why he's not turning up and what am I doing wrong and do I need to focus on dating strategy or a new online profile, or perhaps I'm not feeling attractive enough. None of it was about the outer stuff. And that's sort of what I noticed with my beautiful love coaching clients, is we sort of slipped into a space of focusing a lot on what I call the strategy, the outer stuff, the behavioural stuff. So how do I need to act on a date? What should I text him? How can I behave in a way that's going to make myself more attractive? A lot of that outer stuff, whilst I wouldn't say it's not important, most of that happens more naturally and more effortlessly when we're in a high vibrational state and we've done the inner work that we need to do to allow ourselves to be there. So taking the process, I guess, that I took my breakup clients to energetically clear themselves of the things that were holding them back, I noticed that it was actually those practical steps that I was using with my breakup clients that were the most critical to helping them get into a new relationship. So I do love coaching a whole totally different way, but I want to share with you those particular steps and why it's so important to relate those to a breakup. And the reason is because, and I'm going to give you a little bit of an analogy here, because a broken heart, let's say a broken heart or heartbreak, what we experience when we're going through a breakup, I liken that to when we have an actual injury. So say perhaps we have a broken arm. And what happens when we get a broken arm? We don't go and show it to our friends and chat about it to our friends, and our friends say, or family says, she'll be right, you can do much better next time, just get back on the horse, it's going to be okay. We don't just go about our everyday life and just say, oh, time will heal it, it will be fine. And the analogy is similar with a broken heart, with all of our beautiful, well-meaning, well-intentioned family and friends that are just telling us everything that they think is the right thing for us to hear. What we tend to do is just kind of think, I'll try and get myself back into life. I'll try and keep myself busy. I'll try and be distracted. Hopefully when I meet someone new, I won't be feeling as bad about what's happened in the past. That kind of strategy doesn't work when we have a broken arm, right? So what do we do when we have a broken arm? Okay, we actually have it assessed by a professional. We have them look at it, we have it treated, we have it set properly, okay? And then we also take some time to go through some rehabilitation so that coming out the other side of a broken arm, it's fully functioning. We don't end up with a bung arm. Because what happens a lot of the time, particularly if you're in your 30s and 40s and you've had a number of painful breakups, is that it's like breaking it all over again. So your heart, when you have another breakup, it's not usually just the pain of one breakup, it often brings up the pain over a number of different breakups. So, and some of the old wounding, and just reinforces some of that old beliefs that we had. So that's why it's so important that we do breakups right. And so many of us, I think, don't consciously complete those breakups as well. So let me move on to teaching you about the 4 steps, or the 4 keys that I see that you can utilize and learn from your breakup, past or recent, that will help you in terms of creating, I guess, the right framework to be able to create an epic partnership. And the first key that I want to talk about is learning how to manage your emotions. And when I say this, I'm not talking about learning how to not feel or learning how to repress painful emotions. I'm talking about strategies that prevent us from going down that rabbit hole of really awful thoughts that then become feelings and can be really debilitating, because there is definitely a way around that. And for those of you that are familiar with, I guess, how the brain and emotion connection works, often our emotions are triggered initially by a thought that we have. Often the reason we get stuck in feeling those deep unwanted emotions like sadness, rejection, disappointment, anger, and regret is because of the thoughts that we've been thinking leading up to them. Okay, so particularly if you've gone through a painful breakup, you know that it's so very easy to replay everything over in your head, replay the breakup conversations, replay, who said what happened, could I have done things differently, what did that mean, what is he thinking now, and it's very difficult because we never really get full closure, we never really get full understanding when it comes to a breakup. And so for many of us, we have a tendency to replay that over and over and over. And because we're so consumed with those thoughts are then linked with emotions, and then those emotions become full feeling. So that's why we can get stuck in that feeling for so long. So the first point, just to reiterate, is to learn some techniques to be able to manage those emotions. And one technique, I learnt many techniques in NLP, which is amazing for those of you that have that are familiar with NLP or have studied NLP. But one technique is just to notice what you're thinking. If I'm feeling awful right now, I've just sunk myself into a really crappy depressive state. What were the thoughts that I was thinking prior to that? What are the thoughts that lead me down that path of feeling really crappy? And become more mindful of what you're thinking, because there is the ability to be able to notice the thoughts that you're thinking and to be able to shift those away and focus them on alternative thoughts that don't lead you down the rabbit hole. Okay, there's a number of other different ways which you can learn to manage these emotions, and certainly if there are deep wounds or very traumatic events or very painful things and things that have happened, you can literally go in and do some reprogramming around those things so that the way that they're stored in your memory doesn't evoke the degree of negative emotions that you're feeling right now. There's lots of beautiful spiritual practices that can support you with this as well, and that's why we've had a number of different guest experts that have shared some of those tools with you. We've had Shelley and Anya and Alison and Elise in particular have shared some beautiful practices around that as well. So I think that's very important, because a lot of the time we don't necessarily realise that we have more control over the feelings that we're feeling than we actually realise. And I know myself, when I went through my first couple of painful breakups that dragged out like for a really long time, and I was in this really kind of depressed funk, like just not really excited about getting up, not really excited about life, not excited about the future. I know that it almost became a bit of a hole that I sunk into that I didn't know how to get myself out of. And, I tended to, like, shitty things would happen to me. And so I kind of had a tendency to blame my mood on, the way someone else made me feel, or something that happened that wasn't my fault. And what I noticed was that also too, while I was in that funk of a state, you could call it, I noticed that it was very obvious I was not in a good place, and I did have a lot of friends and family rally around to try and support me, which is beautiful and it's wonderful. But I also want, for any of you who are not in a good place at the moment, to notice that there can be a tendency for some of us to stay in that place, in that funk, because it feels nice to have family and friends around to support us. And what ends up happening is they almost tend to actually enable us to stay there, because we know once we get back to having a cracking epic life again, they might not necessarily be as available or as supportive as what they have been. So just a little side note for any of you that has someone who's extremely supportive of you going through a really rough time, just notice if there's the potential for you to, without even realising it, to be enabled to stay there rather than shifting out of it. Okay, so I'm going to move on to point number 2, and this is how we can leverage our breakup to create an epic relationship, and that is to take the time to do, like I said, the deep healing work that we need to do. And oftentimes it can be a number of different things. So we can go back and take a look at what the source wounds are. What did that breakup bring up for us? I know for me, it brought up an abandonment fear that I'd always had. It brought up like no man's ever going to stick around. It doesn't matter what I do. I'm just either attract or I'm just always going to have a man that's eventually going to leave. And every single relationship reinforced that. So taking a look at what's your source wound and how is it that you can heal that, because there may likely potentially be a pattern, and each new relationship is actually going to mirror back to you what it is that you need to heal. So if your biggest lesson out of this relationship is not learnt this time, it's probably going to happen again in the next relationship until you've learnt the lesson that you need to learn that's completely going to transform things for you. Okay, so healing those old beliefs that you have about not feeling loved, not feeling worthy, and for some of you that have had a relationship breakdown quite a long time ago and you feel as though you've healed from that, it's possible that you might need to go back and essentially do what we call a re-break of that heart wound. If it's healed, but you might have healed it in a way that created these really powerful beliefs around, I don't need a partner, to support me. I don't need love in my life. We can often heal in a way that blocks us off from being receptive and open to love. I think doing that healing work as well encourages us to look at what our part of the breakup was. And I know that it's so easy to come out of a relationship and to blame the other person, to say he was of really bad character and he did this wrong and I should never have been with him in the first place, and there were warning signs, and obviously our friends and family validate that for us as well a lot of the time. But if we just do that and we don't reflect on what part we played in it, it essentially takes two people for a relationship not to work. So it's so important that we honour ourselves by essentially unwrapping the dynamics of that relationship and taking ownership of what part of it I played in it not working. How could I learn to do things differently? How can I learn to be the best possible partner that I can possibly be? And regardless of what type of relationship dynamic you had, there's always something in there that you can learn. There's always a beautiful gift in there that you can learn about, new relationship skills, about new attachment behaviours. I'm going to talk a little bit about attachment in a moment. Often when we break up with someone, this is a really tricky one, because there was the part of us that really loved and deeply connected with that person, and then after we break up, there's a part of us that has really strong negative feelings around that person, sometimes anger, sometimes deep resentment. And so there's this kind of inner conflict that we have. Like, part of us was like, was I wrong about them all the time? Was it not real? And then, so it's integrating those two parts as well is another process that can be very valuable for a lot of you who feel as though you feel torn, you feel resentment and sometimes hatred and disappointment and bitterness towards your ex, but then you also really love them as well. So that actually causes conflict within us if that's not resolved, and it also brings up I guess a kind of a bit of shame in terms of our own choices. And for a lot of people, I know, particularly if it's a divorce and there's children involved, we can carry this sense of shame around, not being able to make a relationship work, and we can hold a lot of self-blame and feel as if we're a little bit less than because we weren't able to make our relationship work. We take that failure on personally. So also notice, as part of your opportunity to do the inner healing around your breakup, if you're holding on to any of that shame about not making a relationship work, because I really want to encourage you to understand we live in such different times now, and what we're looking for out of a relationship is really so much different than I guess our parents' generation and generations before that. And so it's certainly not always realistic for one relationship to carry us through our whole lifetime, because we change. And much like nowadays, we usually don't just get one job. We can have multiple careers in our lifetime. I really want to strip away a lot of the shame around not having one relationship last a lifetime. I think it's perfectly okay. We all want everlasting love, and we all want a beautiful, deep connection. But there is no shame around if a relationship hadn't worked, because you absolutely did your best, and sometimes that person was not meant to be for us for a lifetime. And honestly, it's okay. It really is okay. So notice that if you have any shame around that. Notice because if you don't heal some of this stuff, if we have, for example, like my belief that men are always going to leave, if you carry some of that baggage and insecurities into your next relationship, even if you have a really committed, devoted, secure partner, it can sometimes mean that it can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if we already feel insecure about someone leaving, even if they have no intention of being unfaithful, or even if they are really committed to us, if we start doubting them and start asking questions or start acting in a way where we expect that they might leave, it can fracture the trust in a relationship, even with a really trustworthy person. And that's just one of the ways in which our insecurities can actually become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I want you to really take stock of what healing work, what baggage, what is it that I want to release before I move into my next relationship? What were some of the painful things I went through, that I might need to heal, so that it's not carried into the next relationship. And lots of opportunity here as well to do work on your self-worth and self-nurturing and self-confidence. And again, there's lots of resources that we've provided for you in the virtual retreat here to be able to do that. All right, so we've got 2 more points to go. I'm going to speed through them. The third point that I wanted to make about using your breakup to create epic love relates to the law of attraction. Now, when I mentioned earlier on that I noticed that my breakup clients would come out of their breakup, create an epic life, and then be very much in alignment with a beautiful relationship, what I noticed about that, and really the main thing that I could put it down to, even though I was familiar with The Secret and some law of attraction principles, it wasn't until I saw this happening over and over and over and over again that I realized that overlaying the law of attraction onto our journey to finding love really was the key. And for those of you who aren't familiar with law of attraction or Abraham Hicks, I definitely recommend to jump on YouTube and have a little bit of a listen to some Abraham Hicks over there. The principles of law of attraction really are about going about your life as if you already have love and you already feel love. And that's what I noticed with my clients. They were, they happened to be perhaps at a work function that they were hosting, and they were having a great time greeting and meeting and, feeling really good. And then someone from their past, who they hadn't seen for years, who they'd met a long time ago, and the timing was just divine and they ended up connecting. Or they happened to just be in a state one day where they decided, what the hell, I'll go out on a date with that person from Bumble, and they were just so unattached to the outcome. They just had a really great time that day, feeling really awesome, and just connected with that person at a level that they hadn't connected before. So it is really about managing your vibration, okay? Because for as long as we are sitting there feeling like, when is it going to show up? Feeling like there's something missing, feeling like I'm not whole or I'm not complete until I'm finally in that relationship, it's always going to keep you at a lower vibration. And sure, you'll meet people down there, you'll meet men down there, but it just might not be the quality of a relationship that you'd like, or it might not last. So definitely look more into how can I use the principles of law of attraction in terms of supporting me in my relationship goals as well. And the very last thing that I wanted to talk about as far as how we can use our breakup to create epic love is the importance of learning about your attachment style and about attachment behaviors. Now, I know many of you have already taken the love bonding and attachment quiz, and I'm going to link it up below the video down here so you can actually take that quiz. You can pause the video and take the quiz, or you can take it after the video. But understanding your attachment style, the way that you bond with people, why you're attracted to certain types of people and not attracted to other types of people, why when there's potentially conflict in a relationship, or you've something has happened in the relationship, why do I act a certain way? Why do I feel triggered in certain ways? I really believe that understanding your attachment style can be extremely helpful in learning how to choose the right partners, create beautiful connections, and connections that actually last, and learn to moderate some of those triggers and insecurities that we might have that come up in relationships. And I think this is particularly important for those of you that identify with the anxious, insecure attachment style. And you know, I guess research shows that about 20% of the population identify with the anxious, insecure attachment style. That's personally my style. The other two styles, for those who aren't familiar with attachment styles, the other two styles are secure and the avoidant style. But the anxious, insecure attachment style, particularly when it comes to relationships, we have a tendency to bond and connect very deeply with someone. So our breakups, I would say, are perhaps particularly more painful, perhaps even, longer or more difficult for us to extract ourselves or unattach from someone. The emotions around that relationship run very deep, because it often is connected to a very, very deep fear of abandonment. Anxious, insecure attachment styles, if you can relate to this, we often have a tendency to do what I was talking about earlier, think a lot, and get stuck in ruminating thoughts, trying to think and understand and process and strategize and figure out what was going on in order to create a sense of safety for ourselves around what's happening in the relationship, because being with a partner who's leaving or we fear is going to leave makes us feel very, 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 very unsafe. Also, to having an anxious, insecure attachment style, I'm guilty of this as well. We do have a tendency to get very swept up in the chemistry and the passion of a connection with a person, and can very often overlook a lot of the red flags that were always there that might suggest that this person is not really ideal to get involved with long term. But the chemistry can feel ridiculously amazing. And anxious, insecure attachment styles, we can often get stuck in what I call a bit of a double bind, in that we notice that either all the men that we're attracted to either aren't interested in us, or it ends up becoming, you know, very highly emotional and very toxic. And the men that are attracted to us, we're just not interested in. So there's an opportunity to sort of open up that gap and create something healthy where we're equally as invested in our partner as he is in us. There's still chemistry there, but it's not crazy emotional roller coaster, on again, off again, you know, stuff that almost feels like a love addiction. And that's where having and understanding your attachment styles can help you to understand, is this actually love that I'm feeling, or is this my attachment system being activated that's making me feel an extreme draw and pull towards this person that I can't even understand where it's coming from? Rationally, my mind is telling me that this is not what I should be doing, but it almost feels like an addiction. And sometimes we can get just as obsessed as someone who has perhaps been an addict. We can be, you know, inclined to super overanalyze, you know, their behavior and how they're acting, how long, what they reply in their text messages, how long they take to reply. We become like super hyper vigilant at looking and reading all the signs of whether someone's interested or not, around trying to create safety. So there is lots and lots to learn about attachment styles, about the attachment theory and what they all mean, which I'm not going to cover in our session today, but certainly if you're interested in learning more about that, and there's a couple of things I can recommend that you do. One, there is an amazing book called Attached, if you haven't read it, by Lemire Levine, and I've linked it up down below. So if you do identify with the anxious attachment style, definitely grab a copy of the book. It will be like a revelation for you. It'll be like, aha, now it makes sense. All those kinds of weird behaviors and things that I've done in relationships that just felt so not me or out of integrity, that's where they were coming from. They were coming from my unconscious drivers. And the book will explain all about the theory. So I definitely recommend to do that. That's the first step as far as reprogramming our attachment behaviors. The second step is learning, understanding the theory is the first step, and the second step is actually learning, okay, so now that I know this about myself, how can I behave like a secure person does in a relationship? How can I reprogram the things that have caused me to have this anxious, insecure attachment style? And what is it that I need to do? What are the right mindsets? What are the right behaviors that I need to bring into a new relationship to create healthy, loving, deeply connected bonds that feel secure, that feel safe, that feel open, that have great communication, where I never have to feel anxious and nervous and worry about if he's leaving or if he's staying or how he feels about me. You know, whilst that might bring up a lot of adrenaline and excitement, and, you know, particularly when you get a fix and you hear from them or you're back together again temporarily, like the drug fix kind of thing, but it's not really a way to carry on a relationship long term. So you want to learn how to have healthy new relationship behaviors. And one in particular that I want to share is, if you identify with the anxious, insecure attachment style, what we often tend to do is feel a little bit off about our partner's behavior, or not feel like we're having our needs met perhaps sometimes, or feel a little bit of resentment building about something. But we sort of question, is this my insecurity, or is this him? Am I right in saying something about this, or is this just me being needy and insecure? Maybe I won't say anything. And what we tend to do is we tend to not say anything, and not say anything, and not say anything, and not say anything, and not say anything, until it builds up and it has so much emotional charge behind it that we just blurt out something, or we make some passive aggressive comment, or something comes out of the blue and he's like, what? Or, you know, or we might, it's called protest behavior. So we might just literally build up and build up and build up until we can't hold off saying anything. And what that does is it creates obviously a lot of tension within a relationship. And so there are things that we can learn to do as far as being able to understand the difference between our insecurities and our genuine needs, being able to learn how to communicate without that emotional charge behind it, and just being able to trust that we deserve to honour our own needs and have our own needs met, rather than staying in a relationship where we not feel that we're seen or heard or honoured, or we feel like we're giving and not getting anything back. So there's so much depth to what's involved in understanding about our attachment styles and the way that we bond and connect, particularly if you're anxious, insecure. And I'm actually going to be releasing a course especially to teach you all about that and shift you out of that old programming. If you're interested, it won't be for about another 6 weeks. So if you're interested in getting on the wait list for early bird for that, then there's also a link directly below the video as well. If that's something that resonates and you'd like to find out more information, then click the link and pop your information in there as well. But the last thing I want to say before I finish up is that for anyone who still feels like they're connected to someone else, they're holding space emotionally for someone else, and you know perhaps deep down that it's not necessarily going to be them, or maybe they're not really the right fit for you, or perhaps you're just feeling devastated because you really had a beautiful bond, a beautiful connection with someone, and they're no longer in your life. I just want to remind you, beautiful, that often we think when that person goes, that all of those beautiful feelings that you felt inside of you, that they're gone as well. And it's just couldn't be further from the truth, because what the truth really is that when you met this person, you decided to make them the object of your affection and your attention. So you decided to flow your loving energy towards that person. And it felt like they were giving it back to you. But the real joy and the real beauty in that feeling, the beautiful, beautiful feeling of having that connection and loving someone, they were feelings that you generated in yourself. So I just want to remind you that he didn't take those feelings away with him. You still have the ability to generate those feelings. And in fact, after you've gone through those steps that I've talked about in the session today, then you will actually be able to move on and meet someone else who you choose to make the object of your affection and attention, and you'll be able to feel an even greater source of love flowing through you. So don't ever think that your own joy and happiness and loving feelings are tied to someone else, someone that you are not with at the moment, or someone who is not fully committing to you. Okay, so because I've been so busy running the virtual retreat this year, I'm really excited in 1 week's time to be opening up my coaching calendar again and taking on new clients for breakup coaching. But just prior to doing that, what I've done, and my gift to you, is I've carved out some time over the next week, especially to offer one-to-one sessions for those of you that are either going through a painful breakup or a breakup in the last 6 months that you still feel like you're struggling with, and you'd like to get a little bit of help to shift and leverage that breakup to create something really new and beautiful, or release some of the negative emotions, or to release those attachments to your ex, which is one of the things that's really powerful to do one-on-one in a coaching session. So that's a 30-minute session for those of you that would like some support. It doesn't even need to be a recent breakup. If you still find that you haven't felt like you've moved on as much as what you would have liked, then the session would probably be of benefit to you. If there is a caveat to that though, and it's ideally not for those of you that haven't really 100% decided yet if you're going to be moving on from your ex. So if you're still kind of seeing each other, or if he's still partly in your life, or if you still think you'd rather get back together rather than move on, then I'd say the session's probably not ideal for you just yet. But for those of you that are 100% ready and ready to move forward, then definitely click the link below and pop into my calendar, and let's have a one-to-one chat and really get you some support with that. There's limited sessions available because I'm only opening that offer up for 1 week in different time slots in my calendar. So by the time you're watching this, click the link and schedule yours in right away. The other things that I wanted to mention as well, obviously, if you have the anxious attachment style, get yourself on the wait list for my upcoming, for information about my upcoming course. And otherwise, keep an eye out for your in your email inbox on Tuesday. I've had so many emails from you requesting that you'd like to have all, I guess, lifetime access to all of the trainings and all of the meditations and the mandalas and the workbook and all of that. So I wasn't going to, but per request, I've put together a diamond upgrade package. So just for a very small fee, you will be able to have lifetime access to everything that's contained in the retreat. So you can take the meditations at any time and continue to do them and rewatch all of the trainings and all of that. So that information will be in your email inbox on Tuesday. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining me, beautiful ladies. I really hope that you've been able to have not just one, but several breakthroughs in the area of love. And I'm so honored to be able to support you on this journey. Take care. If you've got any questions, shoot me an email or pop over to the Facebook group. I'll see you there.